Our victim is 60-year-old Joe Keller. The deceased was found dead in his house earlier today. Cause of death, a gunshot. Trajectory analysis determines that the bullet was shot from close range, and the reports from ballistics states that the bullet matches the gun on scene, range 10-22 rifle that was owned by the deceased. As of now, we have no knowledge of witnesses. He's local, lived here his whole life, married to one Kate Keller, has 2 grown sons, one Chris Keller, unmarried and still lived with them, and his oldest, Larry Keller. He served as a pilot in World War II, and he's been missing for 3 years now. Around the same time, he was a part of a scandal. You remember the deaths of those 21 pilots? It was all over the news.
Sure I do. Wasn't it because of defected cylinder heads that were shipped?
Indeed, you're right. Those cylinder heads were manufactured in none other than a company that was ran by yours truly, Joe Keller. He was exonerated, though his business partner and former neighbor, Steve Deever, wasn't so lucky.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, apparently, Keller wasn't working that day because he was ill, so he had nothing to do with what happened. Come in!
And who might you be?
I'm Deever. I'm sorry to disturb you, but I have some information that I think could help you with your investigation.
Deever, you say? Are you by chance related to a Steve Deever?
He is my father.
Well, look at that. It seems that we do in fact have something to talk about. So, where would you like to begin?
I think it would be best if I start on November 25th, 3 years ago.
I think I thought he stayed in a file.
I'm sure you did. It was the day Larry went missing. I should know. I was his girlfriend at the time.
I guess it must have been tough, not knowing what happened to him that day, if he is still alive.
I was devastated. At that time, everything around me seemed to crumble down. My dad was undergoing a trial that could put him in jail for the rest of his life, while my boyfriend, whom I loved, was missing, possibly dead somewhere. After the court's ruling, I decided to move to New York. Every day I had to put up with hurtful accusations from people my family used to consider friends. That was when I knew I had to move.
So why coming back now?
I know the timing must seem a little too coincidental, that I happened to show up just the day before Joe dies, but you see, it's not.
Are you admitting to killing Mr. Keller?
No, don't get me wrong. I didn't say I was the one to kill him. I didn't say anyone did.
So what are you saying?
You see, the reason I came back was because of Chris.
What does he have to do with anything?
Well, for the past 18 months, Chris and I had been writing to each other, and it seemed that we both shared the same feelings. So he invited me to stay over for a few days, so we could reveal our wishes to get married in front of his parents.
So you're telling me you've dated not one, but both of Keller's boys? I don't want to come across rude, but don't you think it's wrong? Dating one, even claiming to love him, only to date his brother of all men? When he's out of the picture?
Believe me, I wasn't planning on falling for Chris too. But when are we really given a choice? The matters of the heart are too complex to meddle with. And my heart had already decided. Joe was the first one to know. Chris thought it would be best if he spoke to his dad first. You see, Kate didn't handle Larry's disappearance well. She was so sure that he will come back, that she saw signs to support it everywhere, even the most ridiculous stuff you can think of. And because I was Larry's girlfriend, she saw my return as a sign that Larry's going to come back again. So you see why it might be better if Chris and I had Joe's support to help us convince Kate to let us marry?
And did he?
Well, not exactly. When Joe realized that Chris was willing to marry me at all costs, even living, he was adamant that we'll reconsider. He just didn't want all his years of hard work to create such a successful business to go to waste. And things got even worse when Kate found out. She was so clouded by her love for Larry that she refused to acknowledge the possibility that her son might be dead. And that's when I knew I had to show them.
Show them what?
This.
What is this?
It's a letter. I received it a few weeks after Larry was reported missing. It's a suicide letter.
Suicide?
Well, you know Larry was a pilot. When he got the news that his father's company was responsible for the death of 21 pilots, he couldn't live with it. He wrote in his letter that he felt that Joe had failed him. It didn't matter to him that the men that died weren't from his unit. He thought that his dad would do the same and treat those pilots as if they were his own sons. And that's why he decided to take his life in one of his missions. He said that I mustn't wait for him, and if his dad was there, he would kill him. Joe just had to keep away. He just couldn't face us, not when the guilt was eating him up alive.
The guilt? But he was exonerated. He wasn't there that day.
It was all a lie. Joe was there. He was the one that ordered the workers to weld those defected cylinder heads and ship them. And when he read the letter, he couldn't bear living anymore. He took his own life. I was on the porch with Mrs. Keller and Chris when all three of us heard the shot. I never wanted this to happen. I told Mrs. Keller and Chris to see Kate's sister for the time being, before they will have to go through police investigations again, and that I'll be sure to tell you guys everything that happened.
I'll be damned. So Joe Keller didn't just commit suicide, he was also responsible for the death of those 21 pilots?
I know you will have to verify everything that I just said, but I can assure you I speak nothing but the truth. I had to make sure that what my father told my brother and me about Joe was true. I knew that Joe's involvement wouldn't shorten my dad's sentence. He was still guilty, but it's still a matter of principle. We have to pay for our crimes. And as for the letter, at first, I had a hard time believing what it said. It took me a long time to finally come to peace with it, and I didn't just want to send it over to the Kellers. Larry chose to share his decision with me, and I felt I had to come here myself to do it. But again, it was too difficult. I knew coming back meant that I would have to face the same accusations, possibly worse, because I left. And I just couldn't have done it by myself. My relationship with Chris created the perfect circumstances for my return.
So you exploited him?
Of course not. I would never. I truly loved him, and not telling him about the letter beforehand just crushed me. But I had to do it in person.
So it appears.
Well, Miss Deever, we will have to speak with Mrs. Keller and Chris to verify everything you just told us, and we'll be sure to review your dad's case as well. But if it turns out to be true, I guess we can close this case sooner than expected.
I would expect nothing less from our police personnel. If you'd excuse me, I have to go check on Mrs. Keller and Chris now. I'm sure they'll need me.
We understand. Please be sure to inform them that we will speak with them within the next hour.
Will do.
I think she's genuine.
I don't know if I agree. There's something about the way she spoke. Like she knew exactly what we wanted to hear. I mean, she didn't even seem bothered by Joe's death. And when she spoke about her relationships with Larry or Chris, I don't know, maybe I'm just overthinking it.
Well, if you're concerned, as for why she didn't cry, I met some people that went through a lot in their lives, just like her, and after a while, it seems like they've been drained out, like they have no tears left. Besides, you have to keep in mind that this is not another one of the crime novels that you'll have to read so much. This is the reality we're talking about, and in reality, things aren't as complicated as they're in books. There isn't some great scheme behind every death. This could be just a simple sad truth that resulted in a suicide.
Maybe I am overthinking it.
So how did it go? Did they buy into it?
Our plan worked perfectly. They were so gullible, I could tell them I was a fairy princess and they would have believed me.
Oh, honey, I'm so proud of you. Now I can die at peace, knowing that the backstabbing traitor died believing that he was the one to push his own son to commit suicide. Serves him right.
It was your plan. You're a genius. I mean, forging the letter for Larry, convincing Chris that the only way we could be together is by walking away from the company. You knew just how to crush him completely. You made sure that the most important thing to him, his life work, will slip out of his hands like it meant nothing. His own flesh and blood was dumb enough to be blind by his stupid infatuation in me, that he was willing to throw away his father's dream. Not only that, but the letter was such a success that Joe didn't only die consumed by guilt, but also by disappointment. You should have been there. Chris gave the most heart-wrenching speech. So pathetic.
I love you, honey.
I love you too, Dad.
Wish we could turn back time to the good old days when the mama sang us to sleep, but now we're stressed out. Wish we could turn back time to the good old days when the mama sang us to sleep, but now we're stressed out.